Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2024 release Doc of Chucky, and yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a documentary about the Chucky franchise. It's a Shudder original, and it's coming to Shudder on Friday, November 1st, so this is a no spoiler review. I'm just going to tell you off the bat, I recommend it highly, especially for a few reasons. One, if you're into documentaries, period, because it's very well done as a documentary. Two, if you're into Chucky movies. Or three, if you're just into horror, because it will satisfy all those areas. I fall into kind of all of those, so wonderful. Anyway, this one is directed by Thommy Hutson, who did some special features for the film The Entity Blu-ray release through Scream Factory. That's the most that they've done before that I can find, but it's perfect experience for doing a documentary like this, because for those special features, they're doing interviews and kind of piecing it together in a good way. This was written by Hutson as well as Mark Allen Miller, who wrote Virus of the Dead. Again, Shudder original coming Friday, November 1st. So it doesn't need much of a synopsis. It literally is a documentary sitting down with tons of people involved in the Chucky franchise, and some other people who are kind of like outside critics or fans or, podcasters, stuff like that. But mainly talking to the people involved with the film and going over every single one of the films in the franchise. They don't cover the show. I was hoping they would at the end, but they don't. But I see why they probably didn't, because it's still not like fully done. Or when they were working on this, it wasn't fully done. I don't think at that point it had been announced that they were not doing another season, even though they have 3 seasons out at this point. But anyway, they do every single film. They put a lot of time into each one, a lot of time, because the runtime on this is almost 5 hours. It basically is a 5-hour documentary. Now, you may be saying to yourself, I don't have time for a 5-hour documentary. I get that. I didn't either. When I sat down to watch it, I watched it in chunks, and it works totally fine that way. You don't lose any momentum doing that, so I would just recommend doing that, because it is broken down by the films. So they have like a kind of intro thing at the beginning. They spend the most time talking about the first one, because that's kind of where a lot of the discussion about, the start of the franchise is, and, how the idea in the first place came up, and the importance of that first film. So that one takes the longest, but after that you could, easily stop, then come back another time and watch, the one for Child's Play 2, then 3, and then so on and so on. So it's very digestible in littler portions, so I just recommend that. But the opening credits sequence of this has what looks like kind of paintings of scenes, and there's at least one from every one of the Chucky films, which I really appreciated. I think it looks pretty great. Very stylistic, very cool, something different. I love that they decided to do that. You get Don Mancini, obviously. You get a lot of Don Mancini in this film, which, obviously that's the person you want to hear from most, because, well, maybe not everyone wants to hear from most. Probably Brad Dourif is one that people want to hear from the most, but you should want to hear from Don Mancini the most, because he's the one who wrote the first script, created the character of Chucky, has been involved every step of the way throughout the franchise, which is very rare for a horror franchise. But you get Don Mancini, and he ends up explaining his inspirations for Chucky films and how some of his ideas were either changed or stifled by studios. I'm always interested in those types of stories, because it makes me think, like, what would the film have been? Because he does say at numerous times, like, I wanted to do this, but I couldn't because, budgetary constraints, or the studio just wasn't vibing with it, or whatever. And then you can let your mind kind of go down that path of, well, with that change to this film, what would it have been like? And so it's just cool to do those kind of mental gymnastics around these films. I don't know if everyone else does that, but I like to, because, it's cool. It's cool to fantasize about what a film could be if it was different. There are plenty of fun visuals that they intercut that keeps it, like, visually engaging. It's not just, here's a person talking, sitting there. Here's another person talking, sitting there. They have clips of the movie, as you would probably assume. They also have some other cool visual things going on that I won't spoil. But it's, it's very visually engaging. But it is also a film where if you're busy doing something, you can just kind of have it on, and you don't have to watch. You can listen to it. You can kind of treat it like a podcast if you really want to. Sorry, my cat's over here kind of looking around. I hope she comes over and gets on screen. But anyway, yeah, you can do it kind of podcast style if you want to. And for parts of it, that's what I did. It's very interesting to find out who almost directed some of the films. That's kind of early on, and there are other times for some of the movies where they talk about, oh, we wanted this person to act in this role, but we couldn't get them. So again, it's just cool to think about what would the film have been like in that instance. They also kind of talk about how they ended up settling on the certain people that they did settle on, and then what those people's contributions were like. And like pretty much every time they're talking to those people if they actually got the roles. So it's great to hear their perspectives, but then they're also talking to people who, did the effects, did the animatronics, the puppeteering, all that stuff. Just very, very cool to get all the information on that. You get great insight into why things went the way they did with many aspects of each movie and the overall franchise. It's not just talking about, well, here's a behind the scenes story, or here's something that got changed, or here's, an anecdote about how hard this was to do, or this was. They're talking a little bit further, which is what you want in documentaries, where it's about the significance of certain scenes and what they were trying to go for, and kind of the subtext that was at play with the film. And they talk a decent amount, at least Don Mancini talks a decent amount about, kind of the gay subtext at times within the films, and then becoming, more overt as time went on, because this was a franchise that was very forward thinking in that sense, because Don Mancini himself is gay. So the fact that he was able to put so much of himself in the film, and then here he is in this documentary talking about how he did that and how it relates to him personally, very interesting. And it makes you appreciate the franchise even more. It makes you appreciate every single film a bit more, even the films that you don't like as much, like the third Child's Play. I'm not a huge fan of the third Child's Play, but after watching this, I was like, you know what? Maybe I need to rewatch that, and I have more interest in it after that. I will be honest, actually, just going through this documentary, I found myself so many times being like, I want to rewatch that one. I want to rewatch that one. Like, literally by the end of the documentary, I want to do just a full rewatch of the entire franchise, and then just keep on going to the TV series. Might do it. Hearing about scenes that were cut is a great aspect that makes you consider how the films could have been. Kind of already covered that, so a little bit repetitive. My apologies on that one. It is great to hear from people like Brad Dourif, Fiona Dourif, Don Mancini, people like that who are heavily involved with the films. But I will tell you, my favorite people to hear from, because of their personalities and because of the things that they had to say, and you don't hear from them a ton in concern with this franchise. Jennifer Tilly, you hear a decent amount, but her personality is just so fun. Also, her relationship that she comments on with Don Mancini is wonderful, it sounds. And she is a hoot. She is wonderful in the interview portions of this. So, love Jennifer Tilly. Also, Ronnie Yu was a lot of fun, and he was the guy who they got to direct Bride of Chucky, which was kind of where the franchise really got its breath back after kind of dying out a little bit. But Ronnie Yu, very interesting, very funny. Also getting some information on his backstory. And John Waters. But, part of that is I love John Waters. I think he's an awesome person. I live not far from Baltimore, which is where he's from. So he's kind of, he is an icon within Maryland, especially in the Baltimore area, and rightfully so. But his personality, he is such a huge personality. And to hear him talk about his little bit that he had in the franchise, and how excited about that he was, and just him being him, just wonderful. So those were my favorites: Jennifer Tilly, Ronnie Yu, and John Waters, although everyone did great, honestly. I do really like the franchise, but this doc makes me like it even more. I would say, a lot of people don't think about this, but as far as horror movie franchises go, this is one of the best. I mean, in my opinion, this is one of the best horror franchises out there because of the consistency of how good these films are. And one of the main reasons for that is that Don Mancini was able to be involved all the way and still is today. And I feel like with a lot of other franchises, including Nightmare on Elm Street, things fall apart when you don't have the original visionary still involved, or even just someone who is able to establish things in a good way and then could be very beneficial to stick with it. Studios, but it's one of the best franchises out there. It's not the best. I think that, Evil Dead is probably the best horror franchise out there. And there might be, if I think a little bit harder, there might be some that I think are still better than the Chucky franchise, but it's way up there as far as franchises go. But anyway, yeah, that's all I have to say about this documentary. It's wonderful. It's great. Out of 5 stars, half stars in play, I'm going to give it a 4-star rating. Thought about going 4.5, but I don't think it's quite there. But a very good 4-star rating. This was a big undertaking, and I think they did a really good job with it. So definitely check this one out. Also, I would love to hear other people's comments on it. Go ahead and put that down in the description. Or, no, in the comments. Then I was going to say, if you want to look into memberships for my channel, stuff like that, there is a link down in the description. You can see what you get for a nominal fee. Subscribe, thumbs up. I would appreciate those things. You can hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos. All that jazz. But thank you so much for your time. Until next time, keep it brutal.